Ethan Cross was the kind of man who made headlines effortlessly. His name was etched into magazine covers, investment blogs, and business award panels like it belonged there from the beginning. At 38, he had built an empire from nothing but grit and ambition, turning broken-down buildings into million-dollar towers and forgotten land into golden opportunities. His real estate firm, Cross Developments, wasn't just successful, it was iconic. But more than his business acumen, it was his image that captured hearts. Handsome, well-dressed, and disarmingly charming, Ethan made people believe in the dream of wealth wrapped in class. He wasn't just a millionaire, he was a husband, too. To Lena Cross, once a simple schoolteacher, now the radiant woman carrying his child. Their marriage was celebrated in tabloids as a love story for the ages, a humble beginning, rising fortunes, and now, the anticipation of their first child. Social media loved them. Ethan always seemed to have his arm around Lena, kissing her forehead in public, whispering sweet nothings while photographers snapped away. From charity events to yacht galas, they looked like royalty. She was the grounded grace to his golden ambition. Their house was a modern glass mansion nestled into the hills, with an infinity pool that shimmered under city lights. Inside, walls were lined with art, laughter, and memories. Lena had just entered her third trimester and glowed with the soft confidence of motherhood. Her days were slow, peaceful, preparing the nursery, meditating, reading parenting books. And tonight, she was excited. It was Ethan's big night. He was being honored by the real estate titans of America for his decade of transformation in urban architecture. But she had planned her own surprise. As the sun dipped behind the hills, Lena stood in the dining room, lighting the last candle on a beautifully decorated table. She'd worn a soft cream maternity dress that hugged her gently, her long dark hair cascading over her shoulders. The scent of her slow-cooked lamb roast wafted through the house. She knew Ethan loved surprises, and this one felt special. A private dinner at home to celebrate a public milestone. The baby kicked, as if in agreement. She smiled down at her belly and whispered, "He'll be home any minute." She walked over to the coat stand to hang up his gray jacket, the one he'd tossed carelessly after running late to his office earlier. As she lifted it, something fluttered from the inside pocket and fell to the floor. A folded receipt. Curious, she bent down and picked it up. It was from the Grand Lucent Hotel, one of the most exclusive places in the city. She frowned softly at the date. It was 2 nights ago. The suite number was listed clearly. But her breath caught when she read the reservation name. Miss Vanessa Thorne. Her fingers went numb. She read it again, hoping her eyes had betrayed her. But they hadn't. It wasn't under Ethan's name. It wasn't for business. It was for a woman. The next morning, Lena stared at the receipt again, her fingers tracing the edge like it might somehow change if she looked long enough. But the words remained, Miss Vanessa Thorne. Grand Lucent Hotel. The paper felt heavier than it should. Her heart wanted to shred it, burn it, forget it. But her mind clung to it like evidence in a trial she hadn't agreed to be part of yet. She didn't confront Ethan that day. Instead, she watched. And that's when she saw it. The changes, once subtle, now felt loud and intrusive. Ethan, once attentive and affectionate, had begun slipping away like sand through her fingers. He no longer lingered in bed in the mornings, no longer kissed her belly goodnight with whispered dreams for their baby. His late nights became routine, always something with clients or investors. The glow that once lit up his face when he saw her had dimmed. His eyes, once so full of mischief and warmth, now looked distracted, vacant, like he was living somewhere else entirely. She sat across from him one night at dinner, watching him scroll mindlessly through his phone between bites. He didn't notice she hadn't touched her food, or that she was watching him, searching his face for a flicker of the man she married. Instead, he laughed quietly at something on his screen and said, "I'll be out of town tomorrow. Quick trip to San Diego. Just overnight. No details. No offer to stay home. No apology for missing another prenatal appointment." Lena nodded slowly and excused herself. In the bedroom, she curled up with the sonogram photo tucked inside her diary. Tears welled in her eyes. Not just from suspicion, but from grief. Something had shifted. Not just in him, but in them. The next afternoon, she visited Ronnie, her childhood best friend and the one person she knew would tell her the truth, even if it stung. Ronnie had been skeptical of Ethan from the beginning. Not because he was rich or driven, but because Lena had always lost herself in love, especially with him. Lena sat on Ronnie's worn-out couch, hugging a pillow to her belly as she recounted everything, the receipt, the late nights, the emotional distance. Ronnie listened silently, her expression unreadable. When Lena finally stopped, Ronnie spoke gently but firmly. Money changes people, Lena. And power. Power turns them into someone else completely, if they're not grounded. You built that empire with him. Don't let him treat you like a shadow now that it's shining. Lena's eyes filled with tears. I want to believe he still loves me. That he wouldn't. But even she couldn't finish the sentence. The night of the award gala arrived 2 days later. Lena stood by the staircase in a soft emerald dress, hopeful, maybe foolishly so. She'd done her makeup, fixed her hair, hoping tonight would bring them closer. She imagined standing beside him as he accepted the award, smiling for cameras, maybe even holding her hand proudly in front of everyone. Ethan came down the stairs, adjusting his cufflinks. Sharp black suit, clean shave, cologne clouding the air between them. She stepped forward. I'm ready. He paused. Ready for what? To come with you. To the gala. He hesitated. Too long. Lena. I think it's better you stay home. It's a business-heavy event. Not really for family. She felt the sting in her chest like a slap. He didn't even look sorry. Just distracted again. She forced a smile and nodded. Of course. Just business. He kissed her forehead absently and left. And as the door closed behind him, Lena stood frozen in the hallway, alone in the home they once dreamed of building together, wondering when exactly she'd become a stranger in her own life. The soft hum of tires on the pavement was the only sound in the back seat of the town car as Lena sat wrapped in silence, dressed in a long black coat and an auburn wig that shielded her usually noticeable features. Her makeup was toned down, and oversized sunglasses hid the expression that had become all too familiar over the past few days. Pain, masked behind poise. She hadn't wanted to do this. She had hoped, prayed, begged herself to be wrong. But the ache in her gut and the weight of the receipt in her purse wouldn't let her sleep. And tonight was supposed to be Ethan's big moment. The man she once believed would never lie to her was now a stranger, and if she wanted the truth, she would have to face it with her own eyes. The car pulled up to the Regal Heights Convention Hall, an opulent venue known for hosting the city's most exclusive celebrations. The lot was full of luxury cars, velvet ropes, and guests dressed to impress. Lena slid out quietly and moved toward the side entrance with a forged press pass she had managed to obtain through Ronnie's cousin, who freelanced as an event photographer. Inside, the hall sparkled with gold and crystal. Chatter and laughter mingled with the sound of clinking champagne glasses. Ethan's name was displayed across massive LED screens. Visionary of the Year, Ethan Cross. His photo, suave, confident, flashed like a brand. She slipped through the crowd carefully, eyes scanning the ballroom. A waiter passed with flutes of champagne. The scent made her nauseous. She gently declined and moved up the side staircase to the balcony level, where she found a quiet corner behind a column. From there, she could see everything. And there he was. Ethan Cross. Standing tall in the center of it all, smiling, laughing, looking like the man she used to know. But he wasn't alone. Vanessa Thorne. The woman from the hotel receipt. The one with the impossibly long legs, flawless skin, and a glittering red dress that clung to her like it was made just for her sins. She stood beside Ethan with practiced ease, one hand resting on his arm like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Then, as the lights dimmed and the MC introduced him, the room erupted in applause. Ethan stepped onto the stage, Vanessa right beside him, holding 2 champagne glasses. He raised his glass. To new beginnings, bold risks, and the ones who help us shine. Vanessa leaned in as the crowd clapped and cameras flashed. And then, without hesitation, she kissed him. Not a peck. Not a staged smile. A real kiss. His hand slid around her waist as if it belonged there. The room cheered. The camera bulbs sparked. And from the balcony, Lena stood frozen, her world crumbling in real time. It didn't feel real at first. Her mind tried to convince her that it was part of the show, or maybe a misunderstanding. Maybe he was drunk. Maybe it was just the angle. But there was no escaping what she had just seen. No excuse strong enough to deny the image burning into her eyes. Her breath hitched. She touched the wall to steady herself, her other hand instinctively cradling her belly. Her baby, his baby, moved. A soft, distinct kick beneath her palm. The timing was cruel. A crowd of people cheered for the man she thought she knew, celebrating his brilliance, his charm, his future. But Lena stood in the shadows, invisible, betrayed, and speechless. Her stomach turned, not from the pregnancy, but from the bitterness clawing its way up her throat. She had loved him without conditions. Built his dream beside him. Trusted him to love her in return. And now, she watched the world worship the mask of a man who had discarded her behind that shining image. She turned slowly, shielding her face as another round of applause thundered across the ballroom. Her heels clicked softly against the marble as she descended the back staircase. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. Not yet. Because now she had proof. And the beginning of a storm inside her heart. The moment Lena stepped into the house, the weight of what she'd just seen crashed into her like a silent wrecking ball. The front door closed behind her with a soft click, muffling the distant sounds of the world outside. Inside, everything looked the same. The soft glow of the hallway sconces, the lingering scent of lavender from her essential oil diffuser, the untouched dinner she'd left on the table hours ago. But everything had changed. Her coat dropped to the floor without care, followed by the auburn wig that slipped from her head as she leaned against the wall. Her chest rose and fell with ragged breaths, the tears falling freely now. Not the loud kind, not the gasping sobs of a heartbroken woman in a drama, but the silent kind. The kind that broke you from the inside out. She walked barefoot through the hallway, past their framed wedding photos and the mirror she could no longer look into. In the bedroom, she sat on the edge of the bed, fingers trembling as they reached for the gold band on her left hand. She hesitated. This ring had once meant everything. A promise. A future. Now it felt like a chain. With one slow motion, she pulled it off. Her skin felt bare without it. She placed it carefully on the nightstand beside the framed sonogram and stared at it through watery eyes. The silence of the house made everything worse. No cries, no screams, just the quiet acceptance that something sacred had been broken. The worst part. Ethan didn't even know she knew. He was still out there, probably basking in the spotlight, lips still stained with Vanessa's lipstick. Lena curled up on the bed, not to sleep, but to breathe. To survive the next hour. Then the next. The sound of the front door opening hours later jolted her. She quickly sat up, wiped her face, and forced her heart to still. Ethan walked in casually, loosening his tie, footsteps echoing down the hall. He entered the bedroom with his signature smile. "Hey, babe. Sorry it ran late." Dinner meeting turned into drinks with a few board members. His voice was smooth, practiced, effortless. Lena nodded quietly, not trusting her voice. "That's okay," she managed. He leaned down and kissed her head, completely unaware of what she had witnessed. "You should have come. But I get it. These things are boring anyway." She didn't respond. Just offered a tight smile. Ethan didn't notice the ring missing from her finger. Once he was in the shower, Lena moved. Quickly. She went to her laptop and pulled up social media, hashtags from the gala already trending. It didn't take long. Dozens of photos were already posted. One in particular, taken by a professional photographer, showed Ethan and Vanessa in mid-kiss, champagne in hand, the crowd cheering in the background. Lena's stomach twisted. She downloaded it. Saved it in a hidden folder titled, trust. Next, she grabbed Ethan's discarded suit jacket from the hamper. Another receipt in the pocket. She took a photo of it. Later that night, as he snored beside her, she reached for his phone while it buzzed quietly on the nightstand. He had grown careless with his passwords. She found texts. Late-night messages from Vanessa, flirty, possessive, intimate. Each one was screen-captured, sent to her private email, and deleted from the history. Lena didn't sleep that night. She laid beside the man who had broken her while preparing the beginning of her quiet war. The next morning, Ethan rushed out the door with his usual half-hearted kiss on Lena's cheek, barely noticing the way she flinched. His phone buzzed in his hand, and she saw the name flash across the screen before he tucked it away with a forced smile. Vanessa. Again. He thought he was so clever, so careful. But his world was already unraveling, and he had no idea. Hours later, Lena sat by the window, rubbing slow circles over her belly as the wind rustled through the garden. Her instincts had been right all along, but now she had confirmation. Photos, screenshots, timestamps. And still, she hadn't confronted him. Not because she was weak, but because she wasn't finished collecting truth. The more silent she remained, the more careless he became. She sipped her tea slowly, trying to focus on the soft fluttering movements of her baby. But her mind kept drifting to the image that haunted her most, Ethan smiling at Vanessa with the same smile he once gave Lena when he proposed under the stars in Bali. The same smile he wore when he placed her wedding ring on her finger. Now, that smile belonged to a stranger. Later that week, the whispers turned into bold footsteps. Vanessa began showing up at Ethan's office during the day, unannounced and unapologetic. The staff noticed, of course. Secretaries exchanged glances, interns whispered behind the water coolers. She didn't try to hide it. She laughed loudly in the hallways, called him darling in front of colleagues, and once even leaned over to kiss his cheek during a team meeting, her crimson lipstick staining the collar of his white shirt. Ethan brushed it off like it was harmless flirtation. But Vanessa didn't care about discretion. She cared about claiming what she thought was hers. Back at home, Lena noticed the faint lipstick smudges, the faint traces of perfume she didn't wear, and the emotional distance widening every day like a canyon she could no longer leap across. And still, she said nothing. One morning, a plain brown envelope arrived. No return address. Just her name written in neat cursive. Curious, Lena opened it while seated on the nursery floor, folding baby clothes. Inside were several high-gloss photos. Her breath hitched as she flipped through them. Ethan and Vanessa, at the grand lucent rooftop, half-naked in bed, at a private beachside villa she didn't recognize. Some were professional, others candid. One even showed Ethan asleep, arm around Vanessa, her face pressed to his chest, her lips curved in a victorious smirk, as if she knew Lena would see it someday. There was no note. None was needed. Lena stared at the final photo, her fingers trembling but not breaking. Vanessa had crossed a line. She wanted Lena gone. This wasn't just an affair, it was a game. A carefully calculated strategy meant to wound, to break, to make Lena disappear with her dignity shattered and her child fatherless. Vanessa wanted the spotlight, the man, the mansion, and she assumed Lena would retreat quietly, shamed into silence. But Vanessa didn't know her. Lena placed the photos back into the envelope and tucked it into the drawer beneath her prenatal journals. Her lips curled, not in pain, but in resolve. She wouldn't scream. She wouldn't beg. She would plan. That evening, she began printing every receipt she'd collected, labeling folders with dates and locations. She backed up her screenshots to an encrypted drive. She changed her phone's lock screen to something simple: don't react. Prepare. Every smile she gave Ethan from that night forward was calculated. Every conversation logged in her mind like an entry in a case file. She began speaking with a lawyer, quietly, confidentially. She updated her will. She opened a new bank account and moved funds he wouldn't notice. She ensured her name was legally tied to their most valuable properties. Ethan thought she was in the dark. Vanessa thought she had already won. But neither of them realized, Lena wasn't losing. She was evolving. Preparing for the moment the glass house they built would shatter. And this time, she'd be holding the hammer. The truth had grown louder in the days that followed. No longer whispers behind closed doors but a melody Ethan hummed openly. Certain Lena was either too blind or too broken to notice. He barely made the effort to hide his phone anymore, casually texting late into the night with his screen turned toward her. His business trips increased. His absences stretched. His lies thinned until they no longer felt like lies at all, just rehearsed lines delivered with empty confidence. One evening, while he was in the shower, Lena sat at his laptop in the study, pretending to look for their baby registry information. His email was open. A calendar notification blinked in the corner of the screen. Vanessa's birthday, yacht celebration, Friday 8 p.m. Guest list attached. Champagne, custom cake, private fireworks show. She clicked it. The invitation was breathtaking. Digital gold leaf, animated stars, RSVP button at the bottom. The sender was Ethan himself. The recipient list included Vanessa's closest circle, Ethan's business partners, and a few high-profile influencers who'd help amplify the evening across social media. But Lena's name, of course, was missing. She closed the laptop gently, her hands steady despite the pulse racing through her. He wasn't just cheating. He was celebrating it. Publicly. Lavishly. He was throwing Vanessa a yacht party like she was already the queen of his empire. Lena made her preparations quietly. She contacted a former classmate, Sohail, who now worked in marine photography and often rented boats near the marina. She asked him for a favor, a small boat for one night, no questions asked. He hesitated only briefly before agreeing. Friday night arrived with a sky dusted in stars. The city lights glowed in the distance as the yacht, massive and glistening, bobbled gently on the black water like a floating palace. It was anchored just past the harbor, music already thumping low across the surface, the scent of champagne and expensive cologne lingering in the air. Lena, dressed in a midnight blue gown with her hair pulled into a loose braid, sat quietly on the observation deck of the smaller boat. She was draped in shadows, far enough not to be noticed, but close enough to see clearly through the lens of the zoom camera fixed on a tripod. She hadn't come alone. Mounted discreetly on the railing of her boat was a high-resolution camera, set to record the evening. She had checked the battery twice, the memory card 3 times. Tonight wasn't about pain anymore. It was about proof. Laughter echoed across the water. On the yacht, Vanessa appeared, radiant in a backless gold gown, her arm looped around Ethan's. Her hair was curled, her smile wide, like she had finally arrived. Guests clapped as Ethan led her to the front of the deck where a table was set under string lights. A violinist played in the background, and waiters in white uniforms passed hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. Then, as the music softened, Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a black velvet box. Lena narrowed her eyes and zoomed in with the lens. Vanessa gasped theatrically, her hand flying to her mouth. Ethan opened the box and revealed a diamond necklace, elegant, glimmering, unmistakably expensive. He clasped it around her neck with practiced ease, then leaned forward and kissed her, long and slow, in front of everyone. The crowd erupted in cheers. Someone popped a bottle of champagne. Vanessa leaned into him, her arm draped over his shoulder like she'd won the grandest prize of all. Lena blinked back the sting in her eyes and adjusted the angle of the camera. The footage was clear. Undeniable. The yacht twirled slowly on the water's surface, the guests unaware of the quiet lens documenting their sins from just a few yards away. Lena sat still, her spine straight, her hands gripping the edge of the seat, until a sharp jolt interrupted her thoughts. The boat rocked slightly. Her hand flew instinctively to her belly. A sharp kick. Then, another. She inhaled sharply. The baby moved with urgency, as if echoing the storm inside her. "I know," she whispered softly, staring straight ahead at the yacht glowing in the distance. "I feel it too." She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat in the dark, with the ocean gently cradling her and the truth captured frame by frame. And for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel powerless. She felt ready. The following day, sunlight poured into Lena's study, soft and golden, but the warmth didn't touch her. She sat at her desk, back straight, hands steady, as she dragged clips into the editing software one by one. The soft clicks of the mouse were the only sound, punctuated occasionally by the subtle swish of a transition effect or the hum of her computer rendering the file. There was no emotion on her face, just focus, precision. A still shot of Ethan and Vanessa kissing on the yacht opened the video. Then came the close-ups, the necklace, the champagne, the applause. Smoothly, it cut to a screen recording of text messages from Vanessa's number, overlaid with a calendar invite from Ethan's email, Vanessa's birthday party, planned without shame. Next came the photos from the anonymous envelope, Ethan and Vanessa wrapped in bedsheets, laughing in the surf, posing in candlelit rooms. A timestamp ticked in the corner of each one, silent but screaming the truth. She layered in receipts, hotel bills, flight confirmations, and credit card transactions that matched Vanessa's spa visits and shopping sprees. Each slide was brief, sharp, and damning. No voiceover. Just background piano, soft, slow, haunting. At the end, she included one frame, a photo from their wedding. Ethan, smiling down at her, hand over her heart. And beneath it, white text faded in. Some women break. Others record. It was finished. Lena exported the file, renamed it, Crossed Lines, Truth Behind the Power Couple, and uploaded it to a temporary cloud account with no traceable identity. Then she drafted a short, anonymous message. You once celebrated Ethan and Lena Cross as the perfect example of love and empire. Thought you should see what really happened behind the scenes. The world deserves better heroes. She sent it to a woman named Bella Hart, a sharp, influential lifestyle influencer and podcast host who had once filmed a glossy, Inside the Life of the Crosses video that went viral 2 years prior. Bella had adored them. She loved stories of strong women and hated betrayal. Lena knew this video would be in good hands. The upload was barely an hour old when the fire caught. Bella's post dropped late that night, with the caption, "This broke my heart. Ethan Cross is not who you think he is. Hashtag justice for Lena, hashtag power without integrity." By sunrise, it had over 1 million views. The story was everywhere. Instagram Reels dissected the timeline. Twitter threads analyzed the hotel receipts. TikTokers reenacted the betrayal with dramatic soundtracks and fake baby bumps. Public opinion turned fast and ugly. By noon, cross developments trended for the wrong reasons. Sponsors pulled out. Headlines read, Ethan Cross, visionary or villain? CEO caught in scandal days after stock high. Lena Cross, betrayed and brilliant, where is she now? The board called an emergency meeting that evening. Ethan, pale and rattled, stormed into the glass-walled conference room to face 12 stony faces and a table full of printed screenshots. The company's shares had dropped by 20%. And outside the building, protesters held signs that read, "Truth matters. Believe her. Lena deserved better." Ethan Cross had built his empire with steel and charm. But now, all the steel in the world couldn't hold up the walls caving around him. Ethan slammed the front door behind him, his steps echoing through the marble-floored hallway as he tore through the house like a man on fire. His phone buzzed endlessly, messages from his lawyer, PR team, the board. His empire was collapsing around him, and in the center of the chaos, he already knew who had lit the match. "Lena!" he called out, voice uneven, strained. "Lena, where are you?" She was waiting for him in the living room, seated on the edge of the couch like she'd been there for hours. Around her stood 4 large suitcases, zipped and ready. Her belly, nearly full term now, rose and fell steadily beneath a pale blue maternity dress. Her hair was tied back in a low bun. Her eyes were calm, unnervingly so. "Sit," she said quietly, motioning to the armchair across from her. He obeyed, still panting slightly, eyes darting between the bags and her face. "Look, I know what it looks like. But you have to understand, this is all being blown out of." "Don't," she interrupted, her voice cutting through his words like a knife wrapped in silk. I gave you every opportunity to tell the truth. Ethan swallowed, hands fidgeting with the hem of his blazer. There's more to this than you think. Vanessa, she manipulated a lot of things. The photos, the messages. She reached for the remote beside her and clicked the button. The TV lit up. And there it was. The footage from the yacht. The kiss. The necklace. The laughter. Every second of betrayal in crystal clear quality. The room filled with the haunting sound of clapping and waves, the moment Ethan had thought he was untouchable. He stared at the screen, frozen, as if watching someone else. But there was no denying it. When the video ended, the silence in the room was suffocating. I recorded it myself, Lena said softly. From a boat I rented. I watched you celebrate her. I watched you humiliate me. And I smiled for weeks after, while documenting everything you did behind my back. Ethan's face crumpled. He dropped his head into his hands and let out a sound, half sob, half gasp. I was stupid, he whispered. God, I was so stupid. I never wanted to hurt you. It got out of control. You and we've been distant, and I didn't know how to come back. You didn't even try, she replied flatly. You just disappeared. He got on his knees in front of her, his hands gently gripping hers. Please, Lena, don't leave. We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll end it with her. Whatever you want. I'll be better. For you. For our baby. She pulled her hands away and reached for the folder beside her. Inside, divorce papers. She placed them in his lap. Ethan stared at them, stunned. You already had this drawn up? I've had them for weeks, she said, her voice still steady. Since the day I stopped crying and started planning. He looked up at her, face streaked with tears. We built this life together. Yes, she said, standing slowly. I needed you when I was building this life. You needed me when you were broke. Now you just need an audience. Ethan's breath caught. Lena picked up her handbag, took one last look around the house, then down at her stomach. Don't worry, she added, pausing in the doorway. I'll make sure our child knows you were once a good man. Before the money made you forget. Then she walked out, head high, while Ethan remained on the floor, clutching the papers that would make her absence permanent. The soft cry of a newborn echoed through the hospital room, followed by the hushed, reverent coos of nurses. Lena lay back against the pillows, exhausted and radiant, her cheeks flushed with the fire of survival and the glow of new life. In her arms, wrapped in a pale blue blanket, was her son, small, warm, and perfect. A head full of dark hair, tiny fingers that gripped her thumb like they never wanted to let go. She stared at him through tears that had nothing to do with pain. Hi, she whispered, brushing a kiss to his forehead. We made it. She named him Zion, meaning grace and strength. And in every way, he was both. The hospital released her 2 days later, and she stepped out not to the mansion she had once called home, but to a new beginning. A modest but elegant bungalow in a quiet part of town, surrounded by trees and birdsong. She had purchased it under her maiden name, using the funds from the shares she quietly claimed from Ethan's company before she served him the divorce papers. The media storm had died down now, though whispers still clung to Ethan's name like smoke. Cross-developments struggled to recover, their image permanently scarred. Vanessa had vanished from the public eye, replaced by newer headlines and forgotten in the same ruthless way she once clawed for attention. But Lena? She had quietly built something stronger. Between feedings and sleepless nights, she began writing. Journaling first, then outlining. Eventually, she opened a blog called Pregnant, but Not Powerless, a safe space for women navigating betrayal, abandonment, and survival during one of the most vulnerable times in their lives. Her first post went live 3 weeks after Zion's birth. He left me while I was carrying his child, so I carried myself. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments. Thousands of shares. Women wrote to her from every corner of the world, thanking her, crying with her, standing with her. And when she posted her first YouTube video, sitting on her porch with Zion asleep on her chest, speaking calmly about truth, healing, and reclaiming dignity, it went viral within hours. Over 1 million views. Her inbox flooded with collaborations, speaking invites, book deals. But fame wasn't her goal. Connection was. Healing was. Strength was. Every time she doubted herself, she looked at Zion's tiny face and remembered that she didn't rise alone, she rose with him. And every day, she showed him what courage looked like. Not loud. Not cruel. Just steady, unshakable, and full of grace. In the quiet of her new home, with the hum of her laptop and the baby monitor beside her, Lena finally felt something she hadn't in a long time. Peace. The grand ballroom glittered with elegance, yet the energy was unlike any of the high society galas Ethan Cross used to frequent. This wasn't a celebration of status or wealth, it was a tribute to resilience, a fundraiser for women entrepreneurs who had rebuilt their lives from ashes. A large banner hung above the stage, "Empower Her, Stories of Survival and Success." Ethan stood in the farthest corner of the room, hands shoved in his pockets, his once polished presence dimmed. The tailored suit couldn't hide the hollowness in his eyes or the slump in his shoulders. No camera crew followed him anymore. No entourage. No Vanessa, she had left months ago, right after his assets froze and the lawsuits began. She hadn't said goodbye. Just disappeared, the same way she arrived, quick and calculated. The crowd buzzed with anticipation as the evening's keynote speaker was announced, Lena Zion, founder of Pregnant, but Not Powerless. A spotlight struck the stage as Lena emerged from the side curtain, holding Zion in her arms. She wore a white silk dress that flowed around her like armor, hair pulled into a soft bun, face glowing, not from makeup, but from purpose. She didn't need a script. Her words were written in the fibers of her journey. "I stood where many women have stood," she began, her voice clear and even. "Pregnant. Alone. Betrayed. But what no one tells you is that the same pain that breaks you also rebuilds you." Murmurs of agreement rose from the audience. "I used to think silence was strength. That enduring quietly made me noble. But silence almost stole everything from me. My peace, my future, and my son's story. So I chose to speak." She looked down briefly at Zion, who rested peacefully against her chest, then back at the crowd. "My son was born out of love. But my strength was born out of betrayal. And the moment I stopped shrinking to protect someone else's reputation was the moment I finally stood in my truth." People leaned forward, listening not just with interest, but with reverence. I didn't win through revenge. I didn't scream or fight dirty. I recorded. I documented. I built. And when the world saw what I had endured, I didn't ask for sympathy. I offered strategy. There was a pause. Then she smiled softly, eyes scanning the sea of faces before her. Sometimes, betrayal gives birth to brilliance. The room erupted. A standing ovation. People clapped until their hands stung, some with tears in their eyes. Dozens stood on chairs to get a better look at the woman who had transformed tragedy into triumph. Ethan didn't clap. He didn't move. He just watched, heart heavy with the bitter truth that no success he could ever regain would match what she had built from his failure. She didn't even look toward him. She didn't need to. She had already won. As the lights dimmed for the next speaker and the applause faded into background chatter, Ethan quietly slipped out of the room, shoulders hunched under the weight of everything he had thrown away. He didn't look back. Because for the first time in his life, he knew. He wasn't the story anymore.